So,
Okay, you can ask. Yeah.
it's based on our talks about casual players,
Uh-huh.
and his idea is, or his question is, he's convinced people have a weird idea of casuals, that they don't enjoy difficulty at all. Leveling in
Mhm.
Classic can be surprisingly difficult here and there, and is pretty engaging as a result. So he kind of wants to know what our current understanding of a casual player is, and if you think leveling is a lost cause when it comes to retail.
Yeah. Okay, so there's two, in my opinion, there's two definitions of casual. There is what the player base thinks casual is, and then there is what a game developer should look at a casual as. Casual has nothing to do with skill level, nor does it have anything to do with difficulty expectations. You can make casual content incredibly difficult, and it could still be casual content. In my opinion, casual content goes more towards sort of commitment than it does to the actual skill required. So you can have hardcore players that engage in casual content, which a good example of this would be Final Fantasy's Deep Dungeons. The Deep Dungeons is actually a pretty casual piece of content because it's not tied to any player progression or power progression in the game. It's not really tied to the game in general. It's just a separate thing. But if you want to do all of the floors in Palace of the Dead, you have to be pretty hardcore with it, right? Like, you're gonna have to really push yourself. The difference is it's up to the player to decide how hard they wish to push themselves. So they can approach it very casually. Basically, maybe once a day, once a week, they go into Palace of the Dead and do a couple of floors, see how they fare. Or you can approach it very hardcore, in which case you're logging in every single day and you're doing it every waking minute of the day. The optimal type of content is the kind of content that allows for application to differ based on casual or hardcore. And as a developer, when you're thinking about this, you are thinking, right, any content that is tied to player power will almost inevitably be considered hardcore content. Because whether you allow people to go fast or slow, the fact that there's player power means that you are almost always going to be encouraged to go fast, right? So as soon as a dungeon drops gear, as soon as a raid drops gear, or a PvP game drops gear, there's an expectation from everyone else that you need to get the best gear as soon as possible or as soon as you are capable, right? So you can't really have any activity that is tied to player power and then try and call it a casual piece of content, because the people who do decide to approach the piece of content casually will almost always be viewed by the hardcore players as wasting their time or not worth their time or just not good enough. So the only types of content where you can have casual players engage with that content is where player power is absent from the content and the content itself is the reason for doing it. Like Palace of the Dead. In World of Warcraft instance, this would be something like Mage Tower. This would be something like Torghast, if you could remove the Soul Ash from Torghast. Torghast would also be an extremely good example of casual content. Since there's no gear that actually drops from there, people can approach it in whichever way they want, and they can do it whenever they want, right? Goblin, yeah, I can pull you in. What's up, bro?
Hey.
Goblin, how you doing, bro? You wanted to have a rebuttal.
Yeah, I was just listening to it, and I pretty much agree with everything about that player power part about being rushed and how that's not a casual experience or something. And I just wanted to bring attention to some of the design of classic WoW, which was a very simple thing, which was mana. Mana was like you ran out if you didn't use it, and it was a mechanic that kind of forced some downtime where you had to talk with some friends and stuff like that, where you couldn't actually move forward or
Yeah.
do something so damn quickly. It's pretty much, basically, as far as I can see it, that's a way to design for casuals, or at least a more casual sort of gameplay loop as you would through, say, leveling or something along those lines.
Yeah.
And so that was all I just wanted to kind of pitch in there, because I pretty much agree with that distinction of, like, you can't mix the two very well.
No, anything that provides player power is going to be super difficult to make casual. Now, to your point, this is something that a lot of people don't even think about, but what would be the acronym that you would use, or what genre would you say Classic WoW falls under? If you had to give it a gaming genre, what genre would it fall under? MMO? Would you say that it's an MMO?
I would say it was a Classic WoW was an MMORPG at its core. Yeah, I specifically MMORPG, because it was still a role playing game then.
I would say it was a survival game more than anything.
Yeah, it could be considered that for sure.
The fact that the world was so hard that you would consistently run out of health, your mana forced you to drink. It was one of the earliest survival games out there, It was survival. You wouldn't leave town without food and drink. The world would basically... You wouldn't have a timer that told you when to eat, but the world would sort of force you to sit down and eat and drink. And a lot of it was collecting things and selling things and making things in order to make your life a little bit easier. It wasn't what we today know as survival games, but it was sort of like one of the earliest survival games. Not taking away from the fact that it was also a great MMORPG, like a core, deep MMORPG, but it was survival. And survival can also be very casual friendly, because for survival to work as a game, the world needs to be very interesting. And that's what games like Classic WoW nailed, was the world became its own character. And the world became its own story. Apart from the actual story or quests, the world was a story that you would uncover. And for a casual player, it was so easy to just get lost in the story, just get lost in the world. I remember playing Classic and hours would go by, fucking hours would go by that you're just killing things and just enjoying the scenery, just enjoying your journey, your adventure in this world, and knowing that danger is just around the next corner made it almost so much more precious. Like, everything was so much more beautiful because you knew it could come to an end at any point, depending on what comes after you next.
There's an extension of that, which was along with the mechanics of why they have an auto attack. It's so that bad players could still have, like, a way of succeeding without hitting all their buttons.
Yeah.
But then when they introduced that, it also meant that really skilled players, the skill wasn't in pushing your buttons, it was whether or not knowing that you could take on a certain amount. It was all resource management and that sort of. So that's why you get a lot of really, skilled players actually dying because they overestimate themselves. And so there was like a fun kind of design thing with Classic WoW in that sense.
So I would say the difference between a casually designed game, and a, shall we say, more hardcore / casual design game. League of Legends is a great example of a game that's designed both for the casual but also for the hardcore. Insofar as, so League of Legends has auto attacks as well, right? There are a number of MOBA games out there that don't have auto attacks. You have to physically attack for it to attack, otherwise your character will just stand there. In League of Legends, unless you're like turning something off, because there is a toggle that you can turn auto attack off. But if you have that toggled on, your character will attack whatever is closest if it's just standing there. But the true skill, the difference between the best players in the world and sort of the plebs, are the people who understand how to clip attacks, how to use an attack, then use an ability so that you get the next auto attack far quicker, right? They understand what resets an auto attack, what forces an auto attack, so that you can string together 2 or 3 auto attacks in 2 seconds rather than just one auto attack with your abilities, right? So everyone gets to play. The hardcore players get to play even harder, but everyone gets to play at the same time. And you are correct. Classic nailed that in many ways. The ways in which Classic in those games really failed at it was when it came to sort of more organized content, like the raids. And TBC failed mega hard when it came to raids, right? Because there you had that entire attunement system, and if you didn't fucking attune, you could get fucked, right? So yeah, that would be it would be difficult, but I don't think it's impossible to get back to a sort of quote unquote classic feel to World of Warcraft.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Is there?
I've taken up too much of the time.
Not too much.
Having me.
Not too much. Never too much. But I do appreciate the question nonetheless.
And I guess the last thing, if there was to be another question, not to answer here, but to think about, you guys had talked about Sylvanas and Zaval, and how Sylvanas' arc could only end in one way.
Uh-huh.
Well, from the beginning, I was always thinking that Zaval was just straight up the good guy, and that everybody reacted to him so badly that they trashed him, and therefore Sylvanas, his character and arc, also got trashed. Something to think about, and with that, I can leave.
All right, Goblin, thank you for the question. I'll definitely give it a think. I really appreciate it. Have a lovely day, dude. Thanks for the question.
Yeah, you too.
All right.